tonight we're discussing how you can use character archetypes for both character creation or campaign development, which we thought was kind of an interesting topic. So, talking about our characters in general, maybe let's start with the characters that we currently have. So, Farah and Aelvid. Which of, or if any, of the character archetypes do you think that Farah is based off, or have you used in Farah's creation?
So what's so funny is like I always go being like, I'm gonna do something different. And then like Farah is different than other characters, but I think
Very much.
I think all of my characters end up being like the lover archetype.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
I could see that.
like I think that's kind of like a home for me, really.
Uh-huh.
Like, and looking at like what motivates Farah and why she makes the choices she makes. Like it all goes back to love for others and also like some of her challenges is
Mhm.
like that lack of identity that can come from being so ingratiated in a group.
Right.
Um it's I always say I'm not going to do that, but I think Vera is probably lover.
Yeah.
Um I'd like her to like morph into hero, but right now she's a little resistant to that. So
Okay. Was that purposeful or did that just kind of happen?
her being resistant.
No, the like lover archetype.
Um, so Farah's background and like Farah's just who she is, her whole backstory is like because of who she was born as, because she was
Hmm.
born as an albino drow, right? Spoilers, I guess. Um, she was chosen for religious significance to be sacrificed to a tree. Um, which kind of sucks. And when Chris told me that, I was like, well, that sucks, and I wrote that in my notes. um and then I kind of thought about how that type of person would need to grow up in
Okay.
order to be complicit or compliant with that idea, right? So she would need to
Yeah.
be like, I talked with Chris about it where I was like, okay, help me understand this, because Mandy's brain is going, we got to piece out of there as fast as we can.
Right. Yeah. This is
Right.
not okay.
Yeah, like no thank you, hard pass. But then I was like, okay, why was she, what was the reason for her, like what was, it's kind of like asking your director when you're in a play, what's my motivation here?
Yes,
um
absolutely.
um and he was like, well, you were taught it was for the good of your people. um it's for what your people needed to survive. uh and Farah at her core loves her people. It just, we haven't really hit that, or
Hmm.
nobody's really talked to her about it in games, so it hasn't been something that's been brought up. So I didn't like go to the archetype and was like, that one.
Right.
It was more, I read a lot,
Mhm.
right? So you end up kind of, I think when you get really exposed to fantasy and just literature in general, or just media probably, you start picking up on different tropes and archetypes and things that you really love and are drawn to. And I probably like myself as an archetypal personality, this is probably where I sit anyway. I
Yeah,
think,
I,
like the more
I
I think about
I
it.
would agree with that. Yeah.
So I think it wasn't intentional, but it was also like this moment of, this is the only way I can make what the DM is telling me make sense for
Hmm.
this character, right? Because any of my other characters would have been like, no, hard pass,
Peace out.
peace out, sayonara, I'm done.
Yeah, they
Um,
would. Absolutely.
so trying to find a way for her to fit that, if it was like, okay, she's being sacrificed for the good of her people and for the good of elves in general, then okay, we'll figure that out.
Right, absolutely. I could definitely see that. I think for Aelvid, now granted, depending on what you look at online, for instance, there's 12 archetypes or 14 archetypes or whatever. But
they all generally have the same one.
They do, maybe
Same
different
ones,
names, but like same idea. I think Ilfit's kind of tricky because I definitely think she's a hero,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, similar. I don't know if I would say lover, but like family and relationships are huge to her. Like, so I've been trying to figure out what that would be. Like,
have you ever thought of caregiver for her? Like, not necessarily like, because think about like she's basically adopted Diedrich in like this weird
oh,
way.
that's true. Yeah.
And she's also like Aelvid is very, very loyal.
Yeah, she's
Um,
yes, very much so.
she has a lot of compassion, she has a lot of empathy. And also like I think the challenges that come with like the hero and caregiver can kind of like align or
That's
like they
true.
fit together. I kind of I don't know if you want an outside opinion. I think it
Yeah,
might be caregiver, you know,
that's true. I hadn't
for
thought
like a
about
blend.
that. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea because yeah, it's like she's not a lover. um Caregiver I could see because we've talked about, I don't know how much we've talked about it, like her Feanorks, they are
Yeah.
very loyal. They're very everyone helps each other. So I guess it's not like a every orc for himself kind of a thing in our universe. It's they they all help each other. They're all everyone in the I was just gonna say cult. That is not right.
Everyone in the Feanor cult.
Everyone in
I
their
can
clan.
feel Chris cringing as he's watching this.
um they they all have a purpose. Everyone has a job, and you can't exist in the clan without having one because everyone provides. And so I think, yeah, I do think caregiver would be a good representation of her as a whole. It's kind of funny because the image I have of the different, for the reference for the archetypes, as caregiver, and then it has a picture of Pampers. And I'm like, okay,
No,
not exactly
it can be
Elvid, but
different
like,
things. But you know,
yeah,
like what I like there's some things I like and I don't like about like using character archetypes for character development. I think they're like a really great place to start. Right. And they're
agreed.
kind of fun when we're having these conversations. Like I was reading this and I was like, you know what? I think Fifth, our John's character, like he's the
Yes.
magician.
It's
Um,
yeah, I went
yes,
there too. I was like power magician John.
John. And then it's just fun to like look and you see all these other things, but that's also I think you run into a problem if you are sticking to that character archetype so strongly
Mhm.
that you're not developing, right? Or
Agreed.
you're like and I think development as a player takes a little bit of vulnerability, takes a little bit of I'm gonna be a risk taker for just a minute and I'm going to open the door that I don't and means you have to like step outside of that. And I think sometimes if
Mhm.
you don't want to, or you're like, well, my archetype is hero, so I'm not going
Yeah,
to do something that the creator would do.
right.
Um, you miss the fact that you can be a couple different archetypes, or you can like layer them together, or you can change into something else.
Exactly. Because no one person is ever just one dimensional. Everyone has multiple parts to them, whether it's in, real life or a book or a movie or whatever it is. Like if you do, I'm thinking of one character in particular from a certain movie that to me seems incredibly one dimensional, and I hate it. I will not say what it is because I don't want to get any hate, but
I need you to text me this later though,
I
because
will.
okay, I feel like we might be thinking of the same character.
Probably
Anyways,
is. But yeah, if you do have someone that's just static and it's boring and like, ugh. So you want to have more depth. You want to have, different parts potentially
and that's more
of
fun.
It is. It
Like
is so much more fun. And like
it,
it's exciting and people don't expect it. Like I like that.
yeah, like my favorite moments playing D&D is when like my character does something that nobody else is expecting, or like
Very much so.
I don't know, Feyre suddenly gets a backbone for certain things, or like stands up a little bit, and everybody's like, "Whoa, what happened to the elf?"
It's true. Excuse me. Okay, so here's a fun thing. What do you think about Jay's character, Cyrus?
Mm.
What do you think his archetype would be?
I'm stuck between two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be because I feel like, again, Jason doesn't talk to me about Cyrus very often, but like Cyrus, okay, that's not fair. He talks to me about Cyrus, and like we've had like little one-off RP conversations where they're not like lore important, so we don't
Right.
like bring them up to the group where we're like talking about your favorite color or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But he just made a couple sessions ago, he like chose our group over his crew.
He did.
And
Which is
feel like
shocking.
I feel like there's like, maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but it feels like there might be like some internal struggle happening with Cyrus with
Yeah.
that. And to me, that feels like a little bit of growth. So like part of me wants to say like he's the citizen,
Okay.
which is like, you know, fairness and stewardship and accountability. And I think almost how I've always interpreted that one is like really stringent in who like, and he's always talked about like his city, right? Like that is his
Yes.
job, is protecting his city. And maybe that's also like the sovereign too, like maybe ruler, but he doesn't really have power necessarily,
Right.
but like he speaks with authority about that city. So I think there's a couple that Cyrus could be. And I think it's also a little bit difficult to say, and maybe we're having a hard time nailing down, because Cyrus is so reserved for
He is.
a couple reasons. But also like we really haven't dove into the Elven arc yet. So like we haven't seen him in his home. We haven't really like there hasn't been a reason to talk to Feyre about certain things, right? So like
Right.
we haven't, you know, so there's like things about those characters we don't know.
Right.
Or
Absolutely.
I know things about Feyre, and I know one thing about Cyrus that Cyrus doesn't know. Ha ha ha! And I will hold on to that forever. So I think he's either the citizen or sovereign, like one of the or ruler, one of the two.
Okay. That's
What
true.
about you? What do you think?
I think looking at them again. Um like you said, he's a little tricky on my doohickey. I don't know because on like I don't think I have the sovereign on mine. Maybe it's the same one. But on mine there's one called Everyman,
Oh,
just
yep,
like
there's that one.
belonging.
Yeah,
Um,
relatable.
uh-huh.
Yeah,
Which in some ways I could see him like that. But I do see what you're saying too. Like he's very I don't know, he is a little tricky. I mean, but it
a
fits
little
Cyrus
tricky.
because he is very just
Tricky, but not like trickstery. He's just
difficult to read.
yeah.
I don't
To be
know.
fair, we don't really try to read him very often though,
No,
if
we
we think
don't.
about it.
Man,
We should be better about that.
we
We should
should
pay
be.
attention to him more.
We should. If you have characters like this in your campaigns, make
It
sure that
makes
you
him
try to
uncomfortable. Well,
communicate.
you know, also I think part of that is like Jason is the primary parent during the day, right? So he just kind
Yeah.
of naturally becomes the primary parent at night. And
Yeah.
I should do a better job of balancing that with so he doesn't the baby is sleeping better now, but for the entirety of this campaign, really,
Yeah.
he's been trying to handle a baby on top of RP, on top of having a very sick pregnant wife, all of
hard.
these other things, it's really, really hard to manage that. So I don't think Jason's gotten to RP as much as he's wanted
It's
with
true.
Cyrus.
That's true. Cause like when I've had to go out or you, and like feed children or just take care of kids that are, they wake up or whatever, life happens. Um, it is hard because if you're in the middle of like, gosh, combat or RP, I hate it when it's right in the middle of like some big RP moment. I'm like, no, no. I don't want to miss
That
this.
happened a couple weeks ago. Like there was a big
It
thing
did.
with Cyrus's crew actually, and you had
Yes.
to leave.
And I was so upset because we had just run into them and we had just had Balder, who is my character's new husband, and they
Hubby.
haven't seen each other in like a month. And I was so excited because I had all these things I was going to say. And then I had to leave. And I was like,
No.
sometimes when that happens, we will pause. We're like, okay, wait, pause. But it was just, it was going and everything. And I was like, no, I shouldn't ask them to pause, even though I really wanted to.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to do. No, I think
It is.
it is, but you know, Jason's character. No, you know what? Like maybe he's also the lover. Like thinking about these choices, like
Sure.
I looked up another one and it's like the lover is the romantic lead who's guided by the heart. It seems like he's making choices
Okay.
new that are I feel like he's being tempted by the friendships that he's having for new loyalty. And then he and I have also talked about like he thinks Cyrus thinks, or maybe this is Jason. Mandi thinks Cyrus thinks this, but Jason can correct in the comments, I guess. That our characters, they basically worship opposite deities that are married but have been separated,
Right.
basically. Cyrus and Farah like believe that they have been brought together for a reason.
That makes sense.
Because they are like the opposite coins or opposite sides of the coin. So I'm wondering if like maybe he's leaning into that idea of fate, right?
Okay.
So maybe he is the lover. Maybe.
Jason, we needed to watch this and comment because we all want to know now.
Because he's a writer, so he knows all about these archetypes. So
Yes,
he
yes, he
may
does.
maybe he's been like maybe he's leaning into all of them and we just don't know. But like there's some of them that like Jason's like his character's definitely not. Like
Make a
he's
power
not the
hungry.
outlaw. He's not
No,
power hungry.
no. Yeah.
Look at all
Or
these things.
jester pleasure.
Yeah.
That I feel like would be Saul.
Yes. I love that character, mostly
Yeah,
because he just annoys the crap out of Jason.
he does.
Um, it's really funny to me.
I love it.
So
Um, oh gosh. Okay. So I want to switch a little bit. With this campaign, what kind of archetype do you think, if we could put like an archetype, like just maybe one overall for this campaign, what do you think it would be? Or maybe it's each individual like character arc has their own like that might be more
well, are
easy
you meaning
to.
like theme
Yes,
versus
theme.
archetype?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
So like for instance, Bulverice, the Feanorks, who my
yeah.
character is a Feanork, I would say similar to what she is, the caregiver and such, the theme wise, I would say that it's some ways still that the loyalty and everything. I think all of them are caregivers and like all the Feanorks, but I do think the Feanorks also would be like the character arc and everything would be again hero, I think. And looking through again,
I mean, like
maybe
it's difficult because
it's a little
archetypes are
tricky.
meant to be applied to like one person, but I think like each arc, because I feel pretty confident in saying like we've gone through two character arcs,
Mm-hmm.
right? As we've played, and there's been the Bo Rice one or like the Feanorks,
Yeah.
um, and then um the Repo Sovereignty or Savaria, which was definitely like that was
John's.
John's characters,
Hmm.
which has been so cool. But I think they both had really different themes where like
Yeah.
Bovrice was and the Feanorks were so happy, and it was also just I got the sense that the theme was family,
Yeah.
right? Like the
Very much
importance of
so.
family and leaning into that. Wherein the Repo Sovereignty, that theme for me was really like corruption. Like what happens when leaders aren't leading? Like what
That's
happens
true.
when good people aren't stepping in when bad things are happening because it's not the rules.
Right.
Um, and I don't know if Chris did it on purpose, but there was like something for bad leadership is actually kind of like a bugaboo of Feyre's.
I didn't know that.
Like she has some real issues with bad leaders because of her past, right? Like
Right.
the leaders of her city are lying to her people.
This is true. I
So
can
it's
see
like
that.
for her leadership, and this was even more driven home by your people,
Hmm.
leadership is is sacred, right? Like your
Right.
people are trusting you. So you better act on it appropriately. So to me, I thought it was so beautiful that Bovrice and the Repo Sovereignty were right next to each other because to
Hmm.
me, they were in direct juxtaposition, right?
Yeah.
Like leadership and order were taken so seriously and treated so sacredly in uh,
Both rice.
Bovrice,
Hmm.
but in the Repo Sovereignty, it was the opposite for me, at
Yeah.
least from what I could see. And so to me, like those themes really played it. And it was so fun to watch us as a group go from this very family oriented place into, oh no, like the world is burning down to the ground
You're another
here.
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. It, it was interesting for sure.
It was, especially because the lore behind it all that we've recently begun to explore is that, you know, thousands of years before, or 600 or 1,000, I don't know. The timeline is, I don't ever remember it correctly, but
We know.
it, hey, we're still learning part of it. Um, is that it used to be that the repo sovereignty was very much so structured and organized and family oriented, along with the Feanorks, and that they both learned from each other and helped each other, and that they were like such close allies. And then, you know, all this crap happened, and yeah, they just went
But
downhill.
I think Chris did like a beautiful job in like showing it all comes down to a choice, right?
Hmm.
Like the people of Bovrice made a choice and the people in Repo Sovereignty made a choice.
Yeah.
And mm,
Yeah, it did.
it just went opposite directions. So it's really interesting. And I don't know, I'm sure he did that on purpose because he's brilliant. But these themes and archetypes and things, like they can at least give you a fun, that's like my favorite word, apparently. They can give you a place to start, right? When
Uh-huh.
you're thinking about these. And so themes and tropes and archetypes, they're all like a great place to start. And like Jason and I have talked about, because at some point we would like Feyre and Cyrus to be together, because that's fun for us. Like,
What is
well,
this?
I don't
I'd
know.
like them to
I don't
be.
together. Um,
That's great.
but talking about like what type of relationship trope would we want that to like kind of mimic, things like that. Because you can kind of you base things on those and then you build
Yeah, you
on
do.
it. It doesn't have to be that way. And what's so funny to me is I was thinking about this, like tropes in D&D, and I was like, what's the most common trope in D&D? And I was just thinking and like playing with it as I was working today, and I was like, well, that's a dumb thing because I have a theory now actually that every D&D player has a favorite trope and they're all the same. And it's
Really?
found family. Yeah, and it's found family because that's what a party becomes, is your found family, and is the
That's true.
family that you begin like coming
Molding
together with. And it
into,
doesn't matter,
oh, that's a
you
good
know,
point.
like, so it's so fun to me. I did it again.
It's gonna like
How,
spray you every time. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, sure. I don't know how you're gonna do that,
I'll get
but
Jason to run in. Jason, she did it again.
she did it again. Um, how much of writing bleeds into D&D,
Oh my
right?
gosh, so
Because
much.
writing is so much the just expression of life, and
Mhm.
D&D is role playing life. So of course it's going to mimic that. Of course people are going to fit into these different archetypes, but I think the danger is, right, like I said before, letting yourself get stuck in it, because
Yep.
Feyre's not always going to be, at least for me, like my plan, and I can't wait to play again because I have some plans. And it's gonna be one of those times, I know, where I'm gonna have to kiss goodbye to the plans because something crazy is gonna happen.
Yeah, probably.
But you can morph into a different archetype, or you can start
Mhm.
pulling from different things. And what's so interesting is none of us are the exact same archetype, right? So we
Yeah.
can start learning from other people and like pulling in, like Feyre's going to start pulling in hero stuff from Aelvid, and magician stuff from Fifth, and whatever the heck Cyrus is from Cyrus, and because we haven't figured that one out yet. But
Love about
I
this.
think it'll be interesting.
I like
It's
that.
a great way to develop a character.
It is. It's a great start to a character. And maybe as you're playing your character, different archetypes, you just start doing naturally. Or if you are struggling with sticking to that one, maybe you need to specifically plan, okay, I'm going to also do these. And that's okay if you have to do that. And plan out like, okay, around this time, or something happens and you just like, oh, this feels like a good moment to introduce a different archetype. And it's not like it's like all of a sudden, oh, I'm going to be kind now, or whatever it is. But
Yeah, you can't make a complete 180 because nobody
no,
changes. Like, and
no.
it's so hard to do, especially when you're playing a character who is so contrary to just you naturally.
Uh-huh.
Um, like Feyre, I've said it a million times, but Feyre is so different just from me as a person that I'm wanting to, and she's changing a little bit. Like, I think she's much
Yeah,
different than she was at the beginning of the game,
I would agree.
but it's hard to not just completely change it right away after
Hmm.
something happens, right? Because nobody's like that.
Right.
It's not true to the human experience, or in this case, the elven experience, right? So you have to, at least for me, I have to go, okay, so she's going to be bold here and a little timid
Hmm.
here, and try to weave it in.
Yeah. And that's totally okay to do. You can plan things out. That is the beauty of role playing. um, yeah, and it works out really well. I like that. Uh, do you, is there a character archetype that you think you would never use in any, like, I don't know, any character,
Hmm.
just for fun
Um,
and kicks and giggles?
for funsies. Um,
I don't know if there is one that I would not use, because even like a
I think
power
there's,
hungry or something. I don't know. Actually, no, I am playing a power hungry one right now. Never mind.
yeah, you are. I don't, what are you talking about? I think for me, it's not necessarily one that I wouldn't play. It's
Mhm.
probably one that I feel like more intimidated by. So I probably
Ooh,
won't for that reason.
which one?
Not because I'm like turned off by it or something. Like,
Yeah,
I get really anxious about like being creative in game on the fly. So probably the creator, like
really.
I get really like nervous about it. Like that was part of the reason I was resistant to playing a caster, because some of that requires some a level of creativity
Oh,
on the fly. And that's something that's difficult for me
that's interesting.
right away. So that's a little intimidating for me. So I
Okay.
don't know if I would gravitate towards that. That's probably the last one I would be like, yeah. Yeah, sure. I
Sure.
can, sure. Why not? And then I'll think of 40 reasons why not.
With the PowerPoint.
With a PowerPoint. So there's that one, but I also think probably like the ruler isn't something I'm super excited about,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny because one of my characters is a queen. But to be fair, she became queen after I played her.
This is true.
So
And she was very reticent the entire time.
yes, she wouldn't wear her crown. Anyway,
Now she has a crown room.
she has a whole crown collection.
So she dove right into that.
She, you know what? Go big or go home, right?
Sure,
But how
makes
about
life
you?
better.
Is there one that you wouldn't play or like
I thought as I was
makes
asking you, I was like, oh, yeah, sure, there's one I wouldn't play. But looking at it, I'm like, I don't think there is one I wouldn't play. Hmm.
I think that just goes back to how talented of an actress you are though, because you like you're just like, yeah, I could do those. That's
It
fine.
is so sweet. Um, the only one that's like sticking out that would probably be like on the bottom of my list, maybe,
Hmm.
would be, I don't know if this is the same one for you that you have, but sage. So like knowledge.
Oh yeah.
Um, I think of like,
Wisdom, things like that.
yeah, I think of that, and I think kind of like John's previous character, Geralt. Like everything was, he wanted to know everything. And that's just
Hmm.
not like my, when I think of like
I
making
don't
a
know if I'd
character that's
agree he's
not
the sage though.
really
I don't know if
Geralt.
yeah, because Geralt was intelligent. I wouldn't necessarily say he was wise. Because like wisdom would be like Obi-Wan
That's true.
Kenobi.
Okay.
Like, you know, um,
Does that go with like the knowledge? Because I think of like
like
knowledge and I think of like learning and like, I don't know.
like to me, like sages lend into wisdom. I would
Okay.
say like to me, Geralt, and I don't know what this says about John actually now that I'm saying it out
Are they
loud.
both magician power?
I think they're both magician power. Like, um,
Yeah, a little bit.
because like think about we had like this really cool for those listening. We had in our last campaign there was this really cool sequence of encounters where we basically each different character became the BBEG for us to
Ugh,
fight.
it's
And like
great.
it was honestly that was probably my favorite gameplay we've ever done.
Oh my gosh, it was
Um and that was
so
probably the
awesome.
riskiest thing I've ever done in combat, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But Geralf's character was so powerful, Chris really only had to give him more HP.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
You know what I like?
That's a good
Nuts.
point.
So
Hmm.
he was powerful and intelligent, but he's not necessarily
Yeah, that's
wise.
true. Well, that's a
You
good
know,
point. Hmm.
I think of wisdom of the sage, and I think of like Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Oracle from the Matrix, things like that.
Okay. Okay, so my statement still stands. This
Like,
still
no, I don't.
probably
I don't
be,
want to do that. No, thank you. I would
but
rather not be Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't want to be anyone's only hope.
no. He does have an amazing singing voice.
He really does.
He does. Yeah, man. All
Moulin
right.
Rouge.
Well, I think that probably wraps up for character creation on that happy note. Have any of you listeners specifically used character archetypes in your tabletop creations? If so, which ones? As we stare at Mandy's flashing light again.
Like, it's
Which
just not. I gotta talk to the. Gotta make Jason fix that.
you do,
Anyway.
that's true. Which archetypes are you drawn to? Has this given you any thoughts of how to create your new characters? If so, we'd love to hear. Please leave a comment and we would love to read it and respond to you. Well, good night, our friends, and we will see you next week. Bye.